Week 5, 2022 college football season in the books. Time for the Sunday recap. The only Sunday college football weekly recap show that actually matters. The Your Season is Over video, Week 5 edition. And man, what a glorious list of losers. We got some good ones today, don't we? We got some repeat offenders on the list today. And we've got a whole slew of teams making their very first appearance this season on the Your Season is Over list. We're going to talk about the teams that lost yesterday. Of course, that's what we do here. Then I'm going to tell you a few teams that won and looked good. Actually, more than a few. I thought a lot of teams had good wins yesterday. And then only a handful of teams, I think, had bad wins or won and looked bad doing it. We'll talk about those. I'll tell you who I think the best teams in the country are. I've got two separate lists to give you today. I think we've got three teams sort of have separated themselves and another three kind of chasing right now after week 5. And I'll tell you who the Heisman front runners are. How about that? Let's start with, well, this one won't take long. This is Minnesota. I feel bad for Minnesota, but to a certain degree, though, you did lose to Purdue. Now, Minnesota, man, they looked so good the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Not only were they winning, I mean, they were just blowing teams out. Minnesota, the only Big Ten team on the Your Season is Over list this week. Congratulations to the Big Ten. But you did lose to Purdue 20-10, which is not a good team. They've struggled all year long. Minnesota's looked unbeatable. PJ Fleck rolling the boat on down the river. Well, this past weekend, I don't know if he lost an oar or what, but they were just literally rowing in circles like a one-legged duck this past weekend. I know they didn't have that running back, Muhammad Ibrahim, but here's sort of the thing. If losing one player causes you to lose to Purdue, not sure you were really all that good to begin with, to be honest with you, Minnesota. I know Ibrahim is really, really good and not having him hurt. And that was out of the blue. I didn't hear anything all week about him not playing, or I don't know if I wasn't looking in the right places or if they did a good job of sort of hiding that. But, I mean, he had gone over 100 yards for 11, 12 games in a row. No one else was even close to that. So losing him is a big deal, but man, you'd like to think Minnesota could find a way to beat Purdue without a running back, but they couldn't. They really struggled offensively yesterday. They played okay on defense, holding Purdue to 20 points. I mean, you'd like to think in today's college football, if you hold a team to 20, you're going to win, unless you're Iowa or Virginia Tech or one of these teams with no offense. But generally speaking, you would like to think you hold a team to 20, you're going to win. Not Minnesota yesterday, 20-10, their first loss of the season. Still, I think the cream of the crop probably in the Big Ten West when the dust settles at the end of the regular season, but we'll see. Almost a halfway point here. Minnesota, season is over. Man, another team that toted their first giant L yesterday, the White Tontos. Florida State and the White Tontos, another team that feels kind of bad picking on them. And I'm not really picking on you, Florida State. I mean, the reality is when you lose, you go on the Your Season is Over list. I mean, let's be honest. I think we all should right now take a moment, a brief pause, wherever you're at right now, stop, and let's give a golf clap for Florida State. This is the latest they have appeared on a Your Season is Over list since 2015, I believe. Wow. Great start for Florida State, 4-0. Not smoke and mirrors, but, that win at LSU was a funky type of game. I'm, 100% positive if LSU and Florida State played today, LSU would win. Now, that doesn't matter. The game's not played today. It was played a month ago, and Florida State won, and you can never change that. But LSU has obviously gotten a lot better over the last month. And then they had the win on the road at Louisville, which is a terrible team, and they had to come from behind to win that one like 44-41. Then they had a blowout home win last week against Boston College, but they're horrible. Just absolutely horrible. Not that wasn't, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do when you play a horrible team is blow them out. But I don't really think that game should have changed anyone's impression of Florida State. But I think it did. That combined with the Wake Forest loss, for some reason, Florida State was favored by a touchdown in this game at home. They end up losing by, 10? 7 or 10? What did the final score of that game end up being? 31-21. They fall to Wake Forest. And Wake Forest really was in the control of the game from the get-go, never really in danger of losing. This is one I predicted. I don't get all my predictions right over the course of a season or in any given week, but I got this one right. It just didn't make any sense to me. Wake Forest took Clemson to the limit, losing in overtime last week, and then all of a sudden they're a touchdown underdog against Florida State. Wake Forest ends up getting the win outright by 10 points. But Florida State, you totaled your first L of the season. Congratulations. Your season is over. Uh, another. What's his DJ Khaled? Another one. Another team takes their first L of the season. And what a shame it is for the Kentucky Wildcats. I'd watch, if those two teams played 10 weeks in a row, I'd watch it all 10 weeks. That was an exciting and entertaining game. I truly believe if both those teams played 10 times, each team would win 5 times. Kentucky had their chances in this game. Some self-inflicted wounds there with some turnovers. Costly penalty towards the end of the game when they couldn't get set on time. I questioned it at the time, trying to run that play that fast. I mean, I get it. You get the big play down inside the 5 or the 10, whatever it was, a touchdown wins the game for you. You try to hurry up to the line maybe to catch the defense off guard or not ready or something, but it turns out you caught your own self off guard. If you didn't see the end of that game, Kentucky was down. They threw a pass down inside the 10. They hurried to the line, ran another play, touchdown pass. Kentucky was going to win the game. Oops, penalty flag on the play. Turns out they didn't fool Ole Miss. They fooled themselves. They weren't ready. It was illegal procedure or whatever they call it when the offense wasn't set when the ball was snapped. They had to replay the down. Will Levis fumbles. Ole Miss recovers. Game over. But it was a great game. Kentucky missed a field goal early in that one that they'd like to have had back. They had an extra point blocked. So, if you're a Kentucky fan today, you're sitting around thinking the whole what could have been deal because honestly, without those couple of mistakes, Kentucky probably wins that game. But you didn't. You lost. Giant L. This will slow some of the Kentucky fans down who have had a serious case of loudmouth soup. Really going back to the offseason about winning the East and all this kind of stuff. No one knew. I mean, we all knew that wasn't happening. Kentucky may be the second best team in the East. We'll see. They got to play Tennessee later on down the road. It's either them or Tennessee, right? Second best team in the East. But you lost yesterday to Ole Miss. Congratulations to Ole Miss. They remain undefeated. What an amazing run game they have. I've been telling people about that run game for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and both those running backs, that true freshman Judkins, and then, of course, Zach Evans. I mean, just 2 absolute beasts at the running back position. Lane Kiffin's got that offense humming because the Kentucky defense is good. They got Chris Rodriguez back on offense, who showed flashes, right? Had some good runs. I think played well overall, considering it was his first game of the season. Definitely a player Kentucky needs back. If they want to try to have a successful second half of the season. But Kentucky toted their first giant L, which means their season is over. Who else lost yesterday for the first time? We're going to save them. We're going to save them too. Let's go with Don't Turn Your Back on the Wolfpack. Don't turn your back on the Wolfpack. Well, Wolfpack turned their back on themselves. Couldn't get their offense going against that vaunted Tater defense, which came into this game. The Tater defense ranked 73rd in the country in points allowed per game. 48th in the country in total defense. They had multiple starters out again this week for this game, including Brian Brzee. What's going on with him? Sad situation with his sister. But he did play last week, but then for whatever reason didn't play. What they call it? A non-football medical issue. Something showed up in his blood work. So I hope everything's okay there. But without a couple of starters again this week on defense, but the Clemson defense actually showed up this week. Played a great game against NC State. Really limited what they were able to do offensively. Pretty much shut that quarterback down, at least in terms of points, right? Gave up some yards, tightened up when it mattered. Only giving up, 20 points, I believe, to NC State. 30 to 20, or what the hell was this? 30 to 20. Oh, well. Sorry for your loss, NC State. Dabo Swinney owns Dave Duran yet again. And really, Clemson owns NC State. Clemson keeps its home winning streak alive, which I believe is the longest in the country. They haven't lost at home since, I think, 2015 or 2016. Pretty good game. DJ UNCLELOU played good enough to win. I don't think, no one thought he was going to put up the numbers he put up last week against Wake Forest, but he played good. He looked good with his legs, running the ball. He made some good throws. Will Shipley was probably the star of the game in that one. Congratulations to the Taters. Seemed to be getting a little bit better the last couple of weeks. Whatever you think about Clemson, and I'm not convinced yet they're a playoff team, that's 2 impressive wins in back-to-back weeks over top 15 teams in Wake Forest or top 20 teams, anyway, with Wake Forest and NC State. So that's 2 pretty good wins there for the Taters. It's hard to see many, if any, losses on their schedule in the regular season at this point. They've made it through what a lot of people thought was their toughest 2-game stretch of the season. Wake Forest and NC State back-to-back. They've made it through that. They still have a couple of ranked opponents down the road. We'll see how they fare. But right now, you got to say Clemson is the favorite in the ACC. Did anyone else lose yesterday for the first time? Of course they did. The Washington Huskies did. The Washington Huskies did. Man. Washington, undefeated, a surprise team to be undefeated this late into the season. Beat the absolute soul out of Michigan State a couple of weeks ago. Beat them so bad, Michigan State hasn't won a game since. But they lost this weekend to another undefeated team. Are we going to have to start talking about these people? What was the score of this one now? This is just remarkable. 40-32? Yeah. I watched the first half of this game. Was it Friday night? It was either Thursday or I think it was Friday. I watched the first half. I wanted to watch the whole game. It just came on too late. I was tired, fell asleep at halftime. This wasn't a fluke, though. UCLA was clearly the better team in this game. They looked really good to me in the first half, especially offensively. The only thing that surprised me when I woke up the next morning after going to sleep at halftime was that they only won by 8. It looked like to me in the first half that they were going to win this game by 2 or 3 touchdowns. They end up winning by 8, but in the end, that's all that matters. They won, and Washington didn't. So, Washington, your season is over. The Pac-12, man, what's going on in the Pac-12? We'll talk about it in a little bit. Southern Cal undefeated, Washington undefeated, Utah and Oregon, which might be the 2 best teams, each have a loss. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then there were 3. Now, these 3 winners each already had a loss coming into yesterday. But they somehow managed to find a way to lose yet again. Let's start with the least funny loss. The Hogs, Arkansas. Maybe the most exciting third quarter I've seen all season in college football. The first half was not kind to Arkansas. They really couldn't do anything. The Alabama defense was suffocating. The offense, well, it wasn't. Arkansas's defense didn't do anything to slow down Alabama's offense in the first half. Alabama did plenty to slow down themselves offensively in the first half with the dropped passes. I don't know that I've watched a college football game this year that had that many dropped passes in the first half. Wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs all dropping passes. Bryce Young had 5 incompletions in the first half. All 5 were dropped passes. Not diving catches that hit receivers in the hands. I'm talking about perfect throws that receivers just couldn't catch. It was very alarming. Bryce Young, of course, ends up going down in this game. Jalen Milroe comes in, ended up playing the entire second half. And he can't really throw the ball that well. But my God, when he takes off running, he is something to see. That run he had, whatever it was, 60, 70 yards down the field or whatever, when he gets going, good luck is all I can tell you. The third quarter of this game was unbelievable. Alabama was up 28-0, right? Arkansas scores, it's 28-7. They score again, it's 28-14. They score again, it's 28-21. They get an onside kick. They get a field goal. It was crazy. Alabama went on a 28-0 run to start the game. Arkansas then scored 23 unanswered points. But then they ran out of gas there in the fourth quarter, and Alabama was able to pull away on the legs of Jalen Milroe and one Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs had basically back-to-back 70-yard touchdown runs in this game. He had a 70-something yard touchdown run. Arkansas got the ball, didn't do anything with it, punted back to Alabama, and on the next play, Jahmyr Gibbs had another 70-something yard touchdown run. It was unbelievable. Jahmyr Gibbs ended with over 200 yards rushing, and 160 or 170 of those were on 2 plays. Unreal. And then, of course, the Jalen Milroe run as well, and Alabama was able to put them away in the fourth quarter, and ended up being not much of a game. In fact, Alabama ended up covering the spread, didn't they? The spread was what, 17.5 or 18? And the final score of this one ended up being 49-26. So, yeah, they won by 23. 23, sorry, 36-46, 23. So, end up covering the spread. So, we'll talk more about Alabama when we get to the good win portion of the video, because, yes, I do think this was a good win for Alabama, especially considering the turmoil they faced in the third quarter. You're on your backup quarterback. Bryce Young is out. Arkansas is moving up and down the field on your defense. They score 23 unanswered points in that game. Alabama didn't give up. They didn't get nervous. Jalen Milroe didn't fold up like a tent under the pressure. Alabama poured it on in the fourth quarter, which is what championship teams do, and teams with winning and championship mentalities, that's what they do. The adversary comes around, they find a way to win, and that's not only did Alabama do that, found a way to win comfortably, blowing Arkansas out in the end. But Arkansas, heartbreaking loss last week to Texas A&M, turn around this week and get it pushed in front of their home crowd against Alabama. Don't know what we're going to do with my boy Sam Pittman. Has Arkansas hit their ceiling? 8-9 win team. It's possible. It's possible. Which one of these piles of absolute shit do you want me to talk about now? Texas A&M. I don't want to hear shit from Shinola about Texas A&M ever again. Listen to what I'm telling you. I don't want to hear anything about Texas A&M winning the West, winning the SEC, making the playoffs, or being a playoff caliber team. I don't want to hear anything about that at any point in any season or any off season until and unless at some point they get to 9 regular season wins. If next year, if they start out 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, 8-0. I don't want to hear shit about any of that. Until you get to 9 wins, I don't want to hear shit from you. You're an 8-4 team until Uncle Lou tells you otherwise. You understand me? We're not even halfway through the season and you're toting 2 giant L's already. 2. Both of which are games you should have won. Home against App State, and now yesterday, you let Mississippi State absolutely embarrass you. This might be more embarrassing than the App State game because of how much they just dominated this game, but they beat you 42-24. And listen to this. You were shut out in the first half. These were mercy points you scored in the second half. Hell, Mississippi State knew they were going to win this game midway through the second quarter. So scoring some garbage points in the second half of this blowout doesn't mean anything to Uncle Lou. Y'all are an absolute failure. Not of a team, but of a program. You're a 4-loss program minimum. You can take the COVID year of 2020, turn it sideways, shine it up super nice like The Rock used to tell you to do, and shove it straight up your candy ass. That's what you can do. No one cares what you did in a COVID year. To be honest with you, nobody cares what anybody did in a COVID year. But yes, you did only lose 1 game in a COVID year when no one was paying attention. Congratulations. Every other year you've been in the SEC, with the exception of all the way back to the Johnny Manziel year, you've lost at least 4 games a season every single year. And you're well on your way in 2022 to showing us that you are who we thought you were, which is not a very good team and not a very good program. 1 number 1 recruiting class. Okay, great. Sign 4 or 5 top 3 classes in a row, then come holler at your boy Uncle Lou and get a coach that understands modern offensive football. Y'all's offense is Iowa level. The only difference between Texas A&M's offense and Iowa's offense is the talent level. That's it. If Jimbo Fisher was coaching with Iowa talent, you would see Iowa results on the field offensively. You've got some serious NFL talent on offense, which is the only reason Texas A&M ever scores a point at all. It ain't got nothing to do with Jimbo and his outdated, antiquated, black and white TV colored offense. Nothing. It's a damn shame, too. It's a damn shame. And no, I don't like Jimbo. This guy just hates Jimbo Fisher. You're damn right, I can't stand him. I can't stand him. He's arrogant, he's cocky, he's hard-headed, he's stubborn. I don't like the way he handled situations at Florida State. I'm not going to get into again. I spent years talking about that when it happened. I don't like him. And it's funny to me, every time Texas A&M pushes a plastic plate out to the 15-yard line, squats down, and dribbles a watery doo-doo into it. It's hilarious to me. So I hope Texas A&M continues to show up in their G.I. Joe costumes that are 2 sizes too small, with their crew cuts, twirling their wooden guns, and embarrass themselves on a weekly basis during the football season. As long as that continues to happen, Uncle Lou will continue to be happy about it. But Texas A&M, your season is 100% over. You might as well start focusing on passing the collection plate around and worrying about next year's recruiting class. That's what you better ought to do, because there ain't shit for you to look forward to this year, is it? Except for that beating you're about to get from Alabama this coming week when they beat you by 40. That's it. I don't want to hear anything from these people either. Laughing at Uncle Lou during the Kent State game last week, a game we won by 17 where we had 500 yards of offense and didn't punt for the entire game. I'm leaving Oklahoma helmet upside down until they win a game. The Texas helmet is staying upside down and underneath the Kansas helmet until Texas beats Kansas. I took the Georgia Southern helmet down off the wall today and put Nebraska back. Welcome back to the living, Nebraska. I also turned Georgia Tech's helmet back right sideways up because they actually won a game yesterday, which we'll talk about in a minute. But right now, we got to point and laugh at Oklahoma fans and their team. Hey, in the 21 minutes I've been talking here, TCU has scored 3 touchdowns on you. What a disgrace. What an embarrassment of a performance by Oklahoma yesterday, defensively and offensively. This was pathetic. This was worse than any single performance defensively that Lincoln Riley ever had. Ever. You could talk about giving up 52 points to Georgia in the Rose Bowl. That was a national title team with an NFL offense. That ain't TCU, Jack. Here, you know what's even worse news for the Boomer Sooner, man? No, the wagon didn't tip over. That's not what I'm about to say. Brent Venables got out-coached by another first-year head coach. Hey, is Oklahoma still better than Southern Cal? I've been ranking Southern Cal ahead of Oklahoma for the last couple of weeks, and the Oklahoma fans are all in my comments section. Oh, Southern Cal ain't done nothing to be ranked over Oklahoma. This guy just hates Oklahoma. Why would I just hate Oklahoma? Yeah, and I secretly love Southern Cal. Is that the deal? To be honest with you, I don't like Lincoln Riley. So me and you have that in common. But it was just clear to me Southern Cal was the better team. Oh, Southern Cal ain't done nothing to be ranked over Oklahoma. Oh, yeah? They've won games. Maybe Oklahoma should try that. Maybe y'all should try that. People out of position. Now, this wasn't just a talent issue yesterday. That's one thing. Because, yes, Oklahoma is definitely lacking in talent. There's no question about it. Broken tackles are not the same as people being out of position. You had TCU players running with the ball, and in a sky shot, you couldn't see an Oklahoma player in the screen. Like there wasn't anybody within 20 yards of them. It was unbelievable. I had to write some of this stuff down because it was so damn unbelievable. End of the first quarter. The first quarter, they were winning 27-10. At halftime, they were winning 41-17, TCU was. At the end of the third quarter, they were beating you 55-17. They scored 55 points on you in 3 quarters. Then they gave up in the fourth quarter, had mercy on you. This was the worst defensive performance of the season by any team at any level in college football. Oklahoma is a sham. I don't know. You better hope Brent Venables is some kind of magician, some kind of miracle worker. He's going to have to be the Helen Keller of college football, because right now, when I look at Oklahoma's defense, all I see is, that's all I see. So you better hope that dumb motherfucker is Helen Keller or some shit, because y'all need so much help I can't even begin to describe it to you. And even if I could, the odds are very low that you'd comprehend it or understand it. But please keep coming to my comment section and commenting the score of the Kent State-Georgia game. Please keep doing that. Georgia's 5-0 and a top 3 team. You're unranked and can't beat Kansas State or TCU. Don't talk to me ever again unless I give you permission ahead of time. You hear me? You hear me? Let's move on. Let's move on. Who won but looked bad? This is a short list this week, maybe the shortest ever. I only have 3 teams on my list of teams that won but weren't all that impressive doing it. Of course, Georgia. Georgia played like complete crap again. I'm going to give a lot of credit to Missouri. They're clearly a more talented team than Kent State, and they schemed us up good in the first half. I'm not an X's and O's guy. I'm not an analyst or anything like I say that all the time. I'm just a college football fan like the rest of you. I just watch these games and comment on what I see. So I'm not an X's and O's guy, But it was clear that Georgia was getting out-schemed and out-coached in the first half of that game. There was no holes for the running backs. They couldn't protect Stetson Bennett on passing plays. Missouri was dialing up all kinds of stuff with their defensive front that Georgia just either was not prepared for or physically unable to handle. I have not seen a Georgia front get manhandled like that in a while. And it was scary to me. That's the first time, well, the SEC championship game last year, there's not too many games I watched Georgia play where I ever think we're going to lose. Kent State never thought we were going to lose. No games last year except the SEC championship game. I'm talking about during the game as I'm watching it. Second quarter of that game, I thought we were going to lose. I really did. Hats off to Georgia, I guess, for not giving up and hanging in there. I mean, they just kept kicking field goal after field goal after field goal, holding Missouri to field goal after field goal after field goal. They'd get within 7. Missouri would kick another field goal, put it back to 10. They'd get within 7. Missouri would kick a field goal, get it back to 10. Georgia finally broke through and scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter, then scored a second touchdown to put it away. Georgia wins 26-22, but not an impressive win. Stetson Bennett threw for over 300 yards again, but outside of the fourth quarter, which was very impressive, by the way, for Georgia running the ball in the fourth quarter. That was very impressive, but, that's a result of Georgia having the depth and the talent to rotate players in and out for the entire game, whereas a team like Missouri can't really do that because when they rotate players, the drop-off in talent is so severe. Georgia doesn't have to worry about that. They can rotate players all game so that the best players are still, basically 100% in the fourth quarter. That clearly wasn't the case for Mizzou. We were able to push them around and sort of win that game running the ball there in the fourth quarter, whereas we weren't able to do it at all really in the first 3. But not a good win for Georgia and a troubling sign that they have performed this way in 2 consecutive weeks. Didn't play great against Kent State last week and definitely really didn't deserve to win yesterday. The defense is what kept them in the game. Hats off to both the field goal kickers in this game. Georgia's field goal kicker was 4 for 4. The Missouri field goal kicker was 5 for 5, and that included 2 longer than 50 yards and 1 of 49 yards. 9 of 9 combined, these 2 field goal kickers. I read a stat that said that's the first time in an SEC versus SEC game that field goal kickers have combined to go 9 for 9 in like a bunch of years or whatever. So hats off to them. But man, Georgia survives a scare on the road at Mizzou and did not look good doing it. Did not look like the number 1 team, I'll tell you that. Penn State beat Northwestern 17-7. Was this their letdown game? I was worried about their letdown game being last week after they completely monkey drug Auburn for 4 quarters on the road at Jordan-Hare. But they didn't. They played well last week, but then come out yesterday and struggled to a 1-win Northwestern team, winning 17-7. Not really all that impressive. And, of course, LSU beat Auburn 21-17, and Auburn is horrible. Auburn was up 17-0 in this game. LSU scores 21 unanswered points to win 21-17. I'm willing to give both teams a little bit of a break in this game because of what happened at the beginning of the game. That has to have an effect on players because it has an effect on me as a fan watching when I see something like that happen. And, of course, I'm talking about the really bad injury to LSU defensive back Sevyn Banks, where he lied motionless on the field for what seemed like forever. The medical workers and stuff were out there for at least 10 minutes working on him. Ended up bringing the stretcher out, carting him off. He had to go to the hospital, the whole deal. All indications I've heard are that he's going to be okay. He's not paralyzed. He's able to move all of his extremities and all that. So it sounds like the worst case scenario has been avoided with Sevyn Banks, but we'll have to see, going forward. But I know we all wish him nothing but the best and hope he's okay. That had to have had some type of effect on the players. I just can't imagine seeing that happen. And then 10 minutes later having to go out there and play. It has to be sort of an odd feeling. So I'm not even really going to go in on either of these teams this week for that reason. But minus the injury thing, I don't think beating Auburn 21-17 is all that of an impressive win. So I did put LSU on the U1, but didn't look great doing it list. A lot of teams that won and looked good. UCLA beat Washington 40-32. And like I said, I watched the first half of that game. I had watched a UCLA game earlier in the year and was not impressed. I was impressed this week. They looked like a much better team than undefeated Washington, and they beat them. Congrats to UCLA. Talked about Bama already. Very impressed. Lots of adversity in this game with Bryce Young going down. Arkansas scoring 23 unanswered points, then getting the onside kick. Momentum is very hard to get in college football. It's even harder to take it away from somebody, though. And Arkansas had a tidal wave of momentum in the third quarter of this game. And they were at home. The crowd was going nuts. And Alabama was able to not only stop that momentum, but completely shift it over to their side and run away with this game in the fourth quarter. That impressed me. That Alabama was able to do that. That was a good win on the road for Alabama. And they needed a good win on the road because they have struggled mightily last season and this season on the road. Not the case yesterday. Good win for Bama. Michigan continues to impress me week. Michigan hasn't had a single game, not one, that I have watched and went, ooh, I don't know. Every single week, I have been impressed with Michigan. I can't say that about any of the other top 4 or 5 teams. I worried about Ohio State after the Notre Dame game. I worried about Alabama after the Texas game. I worried about Georgia now after the Mizzou and Kent State game. I haven't watched Michigan play a game and worried at all. And they dominated again yesterday. They beat, Iowa 27-14. You might say that's not a huge win. Okay. It is not easy to play on the road at Iowa. I mean, if you've been following college football at all, yes, Iowa's offense is a joke, and we all love to point and laugh at it, but it is hard to win there. Weird things happen there. Iowa's defense is unbelievable at home. They force all kinds of weird turnovers and special teams mistakes there. Michigan was able to get the win, a 2-score win on the road at Iowa. They remain undefeated. Good win for Michigan. Clemson. I've been hard on Clemson, especially defensively. They deserved it. They didn't play well defensively the first 4 weeks of the season. 73rd in points allowed, 48th in total defense. 2 weeks in a row now, they have played a legitimate top 25 team, and 2 weeks in a row, they have won. On the road last week in overtime at Wake Forest, a team that can go up and down the field, and then this week at home against NC State, a team that has a pretty good defense. So last week they beat a team with a really good offense. This week they beat a team with a really good defense. That's the sign of a pretty well-rounded team. And if the ukulele continues to play like he's played the last couple of weeks, they're likely winning the ACC, and it's going to be hard for anybody in that conference this season to beat them. Hats off to Clemson. Ole Miss beat Kentucky. We talked about that game already. I'm very impressed with Ole Miss running game. I'm impressed with Lane Kiffin as a head coach. And I've never been the biggest Lane Kiffin fan. Obviously, I respect his offensive mind, but I've never been some kind of rah-rah guy for Lane Kiffin. But man, he appears to have the ability to utilize whatever his team's strengths are at the time. Last year, Matt Corral, okay, let's let Matt Corral go out and win us games. He's an NFL quarterback. Let's let him throw and run it around, throw it around and run. And that's what they did. This year, they've got an amazing tandem of running backs. And Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin are letting those running backs win the game and protecting kind of their younger, inexperienced QBs. And they look good, and that's an impressive win at home over Kentucky. Like I said before, if they played 10 times, I think each team would win 5 times. But they don't play 10 times. They only play once. And Ole Miss found a way to win when Kentucky was busy finding ways to lose. The sign of a good team, finding a way to win close games. And that's what Ole Miss did. That impressed me yesterday in a big SEC game. Oklahoma State over Baylor. I should have put Baylor on this list, and I could have, but they already had a loss. I've already put them on this list once, but I could have took Baylor's helmet down. This is Baylor's second loss of the season. Their playoff hopes are over. So in that respect, Baylor, your season really is over. They lost to Oklahoma State, and the score does not indicate how dominant Oklahoma State was in this game. Baylor, at no point in this game when I was watching it, did I think Baylor had a chance to win. At no point in the game. Oklahoma State, to me, was clearly better from the opening whistle to the final whistle. Baylor never really threatened to take control of the game. Oklahoma State was coming off a bye week, so they had an extra week to prepare. And I don't know if that's what did it or what. Spencer Sanders finally played a decent game against Baylor. The last 2 games against Baylor, Spencer Sanders had 7 turnovers. The quarterback for Oklahoma State. Played much better yesterday. And Oklahoma State remains undefeated, a legitimate top 10 team. Looks like the best team in the Big 12 right now. Them or Kansas, right? Them or Kansas. But yeah, Oklahoma State over Baylor. Congratulations. Utah blew out Oregon State. Now, Oregon State started 3-0 and started to get some chatter. And then Southern Cal beat them last week. It was a home game for Oregon State. And Southern Cal beat them 17-14. And all people talked about was, that's pretty impressive by Southern Cal. You won on the road at Oregon State to remain undefeated. Well, Utah absolutely blew them away this week. Where is that score now? I got to find that now. What in the hell? How in the hell? Where's Utah? I can't see shit. 42-16. Type. 42-16 over Oregon State. Oregon 45-27 over Stanford. You know what? I have found myself becoming an Oregon fan, especially after Georgia has played so bad the last 2 weeks. Even when Georgia blew out South Carolina, I still had people in my comments telling me Georgia was no good because Oregon was trash, you know. Now, I know that's not true. This week, Oregon was ranked 13th. They're probably going to move up again considering some losses in front of them. But Oregon keeps winning, and that takes that argument away from the Georgia haters that, they ain't played nobody. Georgia's got probably the best win of any top 10. Well, they do have the best win of any top 10 team. There's no other team in the top 10 that's going to have a win over a team ranked higher than Oregon. There's not. Currently ranked, I'm talking. Georgia has a win over the currently ranked 13th team, and this week, Oregon's going to be even higher. So Georgia's probably going to have a win over a currently ranked top 10 team this week. So the more Oregon keeps blowing people out, the more I keep tooting Georgia's horn about 49-3. Cry about it. TCU, talked about them, very impressive. Georgia Tech beat Pitt on the road. Georgia Tech beat Pitt on the road. Georgia Tech beat fill in the blank is a huge deal, doesn't it? Georgia Tech just winning a game. They fired Jeff Collins earlier this week. All they do is go out and win a game on the road against Pitt where they were a huge underdog. They were a 3-touchdown underdog in this game on the road, and they won at Pitt. Tennessee had to go to overtime. Tennessee had to go to overtime to beat that same Pitt team on the road at Pitt. Don't matter, though. They beat Florida by 5 at home. Yeah. And Tennessee thinks they're winning the East because Georgia beat Missouri 26-22. That's all I heard yesterday in my stream. Oh, my God, 26-22 to Missouri? Tennessee's winning the East. I'm like, why? Because you beat Pitt on the road by 7 in overtime? Because you beat a terrible Florida team at home by 5? All of a sudden now you're beating Georgia and winning the East? Y'all need to stop. Y'all embarrassing yourselves. Syracuse won 59-0 over Wagner. Now, I wouldn't even mention it since it's Wagner, but Syracuse is undefeated. Syracuse is 5-0 and undefeated, and that might be one of the biggest mirages in the history of college football. Guess what Kansas did? Beat Iowa State 14-11. Didn't blow them out. Doesn't matter. Kansas, undefeated. Kansas and Syracuse both sitting on 5-0. Unbelievable good win. Ohio State, 49-10 over Rutgers. C.J. Stroud didn't have a great game, but he didn't need to. Ohio State was able to run the ball at will in this game. But this was probably C.J. Stroud's worst game of the year. He had about 150 yards passing, I think, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Talk about the Heisman contenders here in a minute. So he didn't have a bad game, just not the numbers we're used to seeing from C.J. Stroud. But if you watch the game, you know why. Ohio State just ran it down Rutgers' throat. Southern Cal, 42-25 over Arizona State. Not overly impressive. Also not a bad win. I mean, they handled business against a terrible Arizona State team. What can you say? They got no coach, the whole deal. What about South Carolina Junior? Speaking of Southern Cal, USC, what about our buddies, USC Junior? Well, they won 50-10 against South Carolina State. And for those of you watching, which is nobody, Florida is beating the bejesus out of Eastern Washington. At least they were when I started to record this video, but I know none of you are watching that game. Of course you're not. No one's watching that Sunday. Okay. Heisman and then the best teams, according to Uncle Lou. No particular order on this Heisman list. Same as last week, I believe. C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, Stetson Bennett. Pop quiz. Who has the most passing yards amongst those 4? Who has the most passing yards between Stetson Bennett, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams? If you said Stetson Bennett, you're correct. If you said Stetson Bennett, you're correct. Who has the most touchdown passes? I think it's C.J. Stroud. One of them has 18. Somebody has 18. I think it's either C.J. Stroud. I think it's C.J. Stroud has 18. Stetson Bennett, on the other hand, 5. 5 touchdown passes on the year. So you can find stats to support. You can find stats to support putting Stetson at 1. You can find stats to support putting CJ at 1, Bryce, Caleb, whoever you want. You can cherry pick them. No question about it. that Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, and C.J. Stroud are better pure quarterbacks than Stetson Bennett. They're all going to be drafted in the first round. Stetson Bennett will be lucky to be drafted at all. We all know that. But the Heisman's not a draft award. It's a stats award. Stetson has the most passing yards amongst the four, has the least amount of touchdowns. Even if you add up Stetson's passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns, he still has less than the worst of the other three in terms of just passing touchdowns. And those three have rushing touchdowns too. So no clear favorite, I don't think, right now. If I had to cast a vote today, I would vote for C.J. Stroud. But right now, I think either of those four is capable of winning it. Best teams, I've got two tiers, and there's a shakeup in this one, and I got to hurry up. This video is way too long. I've got a shakeup in my tier list. Through the first 5 weeks of the season, to me, these three teams have played the most consistently great football. Not that they all have played great every week, but I think these three have separated themselves in terms of playing at a high level the most consistently. Bama, Ohio State, in no particular order now. Bama, Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan hasn't struggled at all. Bama struggled against Texas. Ohio State struggled against Notre Dame. Georgia, if you're wondering, has struggled against Samford. They beat them 33-0, but they kicked a bunch of field goals, struggled in the red zone. 33-0 against Samford. Struggled against Kent State last week. Struggled against Mizzou, a bad team, this week. I think Ohio State, Bama, and Michigan have right now have played consistently good the most amount of time. Second tier, Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma State. Again, no particular order. It's possible Georgia ends up being the best team, or Clemson or Oklahoma State, or Michigan, Ohio State, or Bama. But I judge these teams on a week-to-week basis. If Georgia fans want to get mad at me, that's fine, okay? You can't play that way 2 weeks in a row and expect people not to have an opinion about it, including me. They've struggled last couple of weeks. Top three teams right now, in my opinion, no order. Bama, Ohio State, Michigan. Next tier, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma State. Have a great day.